The Drama is a film starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. It's really a dark comedy mixed with romance, and it actually shows you what happens when broken people stop providing grace for each other. Let me break it down. So, the film can really be broken up into three themes. The first theme being how weakness can cause destruction. Now, if you look at the opening of the movie, it actually shows us this. So, the film is from Charlie's perspective, making him the main character. And the beginning of the film actually shows you who he really is. See, he walks into a coffee shop and he sees a woman that he's attracted to. Now, instead of approaching her confidently, he waits until she gets up. He sees a book that she's reading, snags a picture of it, and he awkwardly approaches her, fumbles. Then he approaches her again and he lies, saying that he read the book in order to get her to go on a date with him.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Genuinely, I admired the book.
See, right away, this is the movie establishing that Charlie is weak. Now, he's not weak physically, he's morally weak, right? He's seeking approval, he fears rejection, and he avoids confrontation. Biblically, weakness like that is dangerous because it allows people to stay silent when the truth matters. James chapter 4, verse 17 says, "He that knows to do good and doesn't do it, to him it is sin." This becomes the entire tragedy of the film, right? Now, Emma, she is also insecure, but for different reasons. She comes from a past where she was bullied and she wasn't really liked very much. She just hasn't built her confidence yet. Matter of fact, she even admits that Charlie is her first love.
So you're saying Charlie is your first
Love, yeah.
So now we see them preparing for marriage. They're at a catering spot testing the food, and they're joined with the maid of honor, Rachel, and the best man, Mike. So now this scene is probably the most important scene in the entire movie. Basically, before this, Emma and Charlie, they witnessed the DJ for that they hired for the wedding. She was doing.
heroine.
So now the group starts discussing at the table whether they should fire her or not. It's really Mike and Rachel who are being super harsh and judgmental. They're really pushing for it. But Emma, she is actually willing to give her grace. She believes that there's another side of the story, basically giving her the benefit of the doubt. That's because Emma actually understands what it's like to be misunderstood. But now pay attention to Charlie. He doesn't say anything. Again, that goes right back to the theme of weakness, right? The fear of disagreement. He's a people pleaser.
Can we commit?
Do you wanna
Yeah?
commit?
Proverbs 29:35 says, "The fear of man bringeth a snare." See, Charlie, he spends the whole entire movie trapped by other people's opinions. And it's that same weakness that eventually destroys everything. Then we get to the second theme, the idea that everybody wants mercy, but only for themselves. See, the conversation decides to take a shift. The whole table, they start sharing all of the worst things that they've done. Mike, he shares about how he used a woman as a human shield against a dog on that same woman's birthday. Rachel, she shares about how she trapped a disabled kid in a closet and left him there overnight. And Charlie, he barely gives an answer, basically claims he cyberbullied someone to the point where they had to move. And then we get Emma's answer.
Almost did a mass shooting.
Now, immediately the energy changes. Rachel actually becomes hostile. She's very angry and almost cold, even. Now, what's interesting is that Rachel literally just admitted to doing something that is cruel, right? Trapping a disabled kid in a closet. But apparently, when it comes to Emma, she's unable to provide her grace because she believes that she's morally superior. And that's the point. People often want grace for their own sins, but judgment for everyone else's. Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 says, "Why considerest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest thou not the beam that is in thine own eye?"
This is so disturbing.
Rachel cannot comprehend Emma's pain because self-righteous people, they barely ever lead with empathy, right? Now, the movie is not saying that Emma's thoughts were okay. It's showing you how broken people can reach a dark place when they're emotionally isolated. Now, what's interesting is that Emma, she never actually committed any violence. She just had the thought of it. But nobody cares about context anymore. They don't care about the full story. All they care about is condemnation. John chapter 8 talks about an adulterous woman who was brought by the scribes and Pharisees to Jesus. Now, the scribes, they approach Jesus and they tell him that the law says that the adulterous woman must be stoned. and they wanted to know what Jesus's response would be. Now, of course, they did this as a way to test him, to see what he would do. And of course, Jesus's response in verse 7 is, "He that is without sin cast the first stone." And that's the whole point of the film, right? Everybody wants to be judged, but in reality, they're just as broken as the people that they're judging. Now, this leads us to our third theme, the poison of public opinion. See, at first, Charlie, he saw Emma for who she is, compassionate, loving, caring. But once other voices started getting involved, he starts to see her differently. Even after Emma explains everything to him, she goes through how she was bullied, where her mindset was at, how she was 15 at the time, all of the things that contributed to her having that state of mind. But Charlie, he still doesn't see it the same way because he allowed the opinions of others to corrupt his own judgment.
You're not marrying a psychopath, right?
Romans 12 verse 2 says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Charlie, he conforms completely, and in doing so, he starts spiraling out of control. He no longer wants to protect the woman he loves, he starts protecting himself. Instead of going after what he wants to do and his own desires and thoughts, he starts asking people for advice. He goes to his friends, and then eventually he goes to his coworker, Misha. Now, he asks her for advice, and what's interesting is right before this, she tells him how she cheated on her boyfriend because he was too nice.
Because he was too nice.
Maybe, yeah.
It's ironic because this is the person that he's choosing to get wisdom from. Like, crazy. 1 Corinthians 13:33 says, "Evil communications corrupt good manners." Charlie, he slowly ends up absorbing the minds of the people around him. And with Misha, he actually ends up kissing her and almost goes all the way. He catches himself and he stops, but still, like, that's crazy.
I don't know why I did that.
It's okay.
Now comes the wedding day. This is where everything starts to explode. Now, for some reason, Misha was invited to the wedding, and Emma, she overhears her talking about a school shooting. She assumes that she's talking about her. So, in an effort to get her to tell the truth, she takes her in a room with her and Charlie, and she tries to get her to confess. Misha, she thinks she brought them there to talk about the affair, and she exposes Charlie.
He kissed me.
Now, all of this just happened right before Charlie and Emma, the bride and groom, they're supposed to say words about each other. So Charlie, he goes up to speak, and he starts off nervous. Of course, tension is high. But then he just goes crazy and he literally exposes himself in front of everyone. He says it all. He talks about the affair. He talks about how the people should stop being judgmental. And he just really goes off on a speech. But of course, Misha, her boyfriend, was there and he heard about it. So he gets up and
I didn't harass her.
so now the masks fall off and everything is exposed. So Charlie, he goes to the diner that meant something to their relationship and he sits there. He ends up seeing Emma, she shows up and she sits at the booth. And now she offers to give him another chance.
I'm Emma, by the way.
That would be grace. Not because Charlie deserved it, but because grace is the only thing that can triumph over shame and destruction. James chapter 2, verse 13 says, "Mercy triumphs over judgment." So ultimately, the drama is really about what happens when weakness refuses to stand for truth, when judgment replaces empathy, and when public opinion is stronger than your desire for love. See, scripture constantly teaches that courage, mercy, and forgiveness are all necessary in order to maintain strong relationships. And the scary part about the drama is that everyone in the movie thinks they're a good person. And that is what makes the movie feel so real. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. None of us are righteous, so therefore none of us should be judged, only God." Follow God and Film for more.